Right, good morning. Welcome to tonight's seminar. I hope that as you come and go today from this floor, you take some time to walk around the museum and see the story of our fraternal and fraternal university. Okay. How many of you have not been up here before? Okay, just a couple people. How many of you have been up here before? All right, most of you have been through this part of the building. Good. All right, today we have a special speaker. We have Jeske, who is not just a hydrologist, but he's also a parent of fraternal students, past and present. And he's spoken here before, not in this room, but another room on campus. And he gives great presentations, and we're very happy to have him with us today. And not only is he giving a talk that relates to biology and water quality and things like that, he's also giving a talk related to aviation and the use of drones. Yes? So what an interdisciplinary talk this is going to be. Right? How many aviators are here today? Okay. Well, a little bit of interdisciplinary. Right? Right? Yes? So, let's give a warm welcome for Jeske.
Thanks, Dr. Gore. It's always a pleasure to come over and spend an hour or so with minds that are much brighter and smarter than yes, my connection to LaTerna goes back about 20 years. I've done work both on the waste management, groundwater and soil assessment activities over at LaTerna Technologies, which is now Joy Global. And then we've had one daughter that's graduated from here. We have a daughter that's here now. We have another daughter that may be here next year. So our ties to LaTerna University have been here for a while. As Dr. DeMore mentioned to you, I'm a hydrogeologist. So today's talk is going to be a little bit different than my normal groundwater waste management type of talk that I've done at science seminars in the past. I'm going to start out with, well, how many of you have flown the drone? I figured you probably would be a few. Anybody flown the DJI? Phantom 3, Phantom 4, Inspire? Phantom 3, Phantom 4? Okay. Figured that would be the case. Anybody familiar with this community or know where this is or anything about it? What's first thought that might come to mind? What's it related to, you think? Chemical? Close, but not quite. This actually is a state penitentiary. And this is where I got the idea of drones. This is located down near Huntsville on the Trinity River. And you can see here at the corners of the guardhouses, it's the maximum security cell block, wastewater treatment plant, water towers here. It's its own little community built back in the teens. Actually, Clyde Barrow of the Bonnie and Clyde fame was incarcerated in this prison at one time. Broke out from this prison. Actually, it's a cell block that's located over to the northeast. So this is where the idea was spurred in my mind, because I was down. There's the prison unit right there, and these are oil and gas wells, or actually gas wells, and so these are drilling pad locations. And I had a client that was interested in buying this pad site right here, which included about 80 acres around the pad site, and I was asked to do a phase 1 environmental site assessment, which basically is to go look at the use of that property, see if there might be any contamination that would be a concern so that they don't buy a liability. This is the Trinity River right here on the west side of the facility. It's about 25,000 acres, and I know all this looks like farmland, and that's because it's got enough little drainage sloughs and ditches to drain the water off of it, because really it's a swamp. And so as part of an environmental site assessment, I look at the historical uses of the property, but I also have to walk all over the property and take photographs of the property. And as I drove up to this site, when you come onto the prison, there obviously are some safety concerns, and that is that your vehicle not have guns or knives or anything that an incarcerated individual could use against you or anyone else in the facility. And you want to keep your vehicle locked at all times, keep the keys in the pocket. So when I drove up on the site, the representative from the seller of this particular asset said, "Let you know the safety rules," and I said, "Yeah." And he said, just want to share with you one day that I was out here doing work on a heater treater, and after 4 hours, a fellow jumps up out of the weeds with a jumpsuit on with stripes on it, and said, "Hey, I was just watching you." And he said he was a nice, cordial fellow, but he said, "You know, that concerned me a little bit that somebody was watching for 4 hours and probably has taken someone's life before." And he's sitting there. So he said, "Just be careful about that. Every now and then they do dog training exercises for tracking prisoners that are trying to escape." He said, "And these dogs are not just trackers, they are attackers." So he said, "Keep your car close to you." So all this is going through my mind, and I thought, I really wish there was some other way that I could access the property. When you step off the drilling pad, the vegetation was about chest high, and it was a marsh. And I thought, wow, how many water moccasins are this 8 acres? So as I was assessing how I was going to go about walking this entire piece of property and taking photographs of it, I thought, wow, if I had a drone right now. And that was 4 years ago when the technology was not where it is today. But that's where the seed got planted. So it just kind of kept coming back. I found applications for it, in using it as an environmental scientist and hydrogeologist. And so a couple of months ago, I started the company and have been flying with this particular drone, and we'll be adding some more aircraft soon. So that's how it started. Talk a little bit about, for the flying guys and girls, talk a little bit about FAA requirements, because recently this summer FAA has issued new Part 107 rules that deal specifically with small unmanned aircraft systems. And that is that the total weight of the drone and payload must be less than 55 pounds. And you can imagine why that's necessary. I mean, even this one weighs 8 pounds with payload. And if that fell from 400 feet, probably wouldn't be a real enjoyable experience on you, or even touching a part of you. Has to be flown within visual line of sight. So if you lose visual sight of the aircraft, you've got to immediately reestablish that line of sight, either bringing the aircraft to you or finding the location of it, landing and going up towards it, and then you can fly the next segment. No operations over people. They don't have a protective cover over them. So, and again, this is commercial application. This is also, if you were using it for your own enjoyment, obviously safety concerns. Don't want to fly that over people who don't have something over their head, such as a car or a building or something of that nature. Daily operations only 30 minutes before sunrise, 30 minutes after sunset. Maximum altitude of 400 feet. And you may say, wow, 400 feet, that's not very high. Well, you can see a lot from 400 feet. The other neat thing about the 400-foot rule is if it's a tower that's 1,000 feet tall, you get 400 feet over the object. So the tower, so you go up to 1,400 feet if you want to. You can actually take that aircraft to about 10,000 feet. But the firmware in it won't allow it to go over 400 feet. But you can fly 400 feet over the structure. Pre-flight inspection is required, and remote pilot certificate with an UAS rating. August 29th was the first day you could take the test, so I went on over to the Grant County Airport, to y'all's school facility, took my test, spent about 30 hours doing self-study, was able to pass it on the first go. So what did with that? Just a ground test. Okay, types of drones. Basically two types. The rotorcraft, which this one here is a quadcopter, and I've seen them all the way up to 12 propellers on them, depending upon payloads and batteries and sensors that are being carried. And then, of course, a fixed-wing aircraft. And most of the fixed-wing aircraft are styrofoam, monoplane, all powered by electrical engines with batteries. I have seen some larger aircraft that are solar-powered and some that are actually gasoline-powered. But most of these are fairly small and very easy to use and to transport around. This is a DJI Inspire here, which is the same as this copter sitting on the table. It's either a Phantom 3 or a Phantom 4, and this one's called an EV, which is produced by a company out of France, the parent company. Types of sensors that you can place on them, and they keep changing, like any technology, keep changing really almost month by month. High resolution 16 meg micro four thirds video camera is what I actually have on this aircraft right now. Pick up the blue, green, red spectrum. It can be used for high resolution, and again, you can also filter through the spectrum as well. There's a multispectral that also adds an infrared, near infrared spectrum, and then thermal infrared. Thermal infrared will be the next sensor that I purchase. They run close to $15,000 for the cheap. but they can do some pretty incredible things. So I'm looking forward to purchasing that and getting involved in thermography. Applications. Hey guys, I forgot to add this as well. If you have a question or a comment as we're walking through this, I'd like to do this very informal. So raise your hand, ask a question, add a comment, and we can discuss that. Uses, municipalities. I have a number of municipal clients on my environmental consulting company side and have been visiting with them, and they've been very excited about using the technology for managing the assets that a municipal industry is involved in. Everything from planning, surveying, mapping, infrastructure monitoring. That could be water treatment plants, wastewater treatment plants, doing annual inspections of water towers, annual inspections of public drinking water reservoirs, the dams. Obviously, you don't want seepage leakage, any issues that can compromise the integrity of the dam. Police are using it for search and rescue. And then also there's a number of firefighting departments throughout the U.S. that are now using them so that a flight team arrives with however many units respond to a particular fire. They immediately take the drone, go up into the air, thermal infrared, assess the structure that's under fire, determine how they're going to fight it, whether they need to enter the building or whether they can fight it from outside. Wow, what a great technology to use so that you're deploying your assets in a safe and effective manner. So that, I think, is a great technology. I think you'll find a lot of fire departments actually will have a drone with a thermal infrared camera so they can do that assessment on the spot in fighting fires. Also, some other applications for inspection. We've talked a little bit about the water towers. Can inspect in the electrical industry, high voltage transmission lines. So that's one with respect to the utilities. Landfill, mining, and aggregates. Anything where topography, volumetrics are needed, that's a great use for the aircraft. I've got 2 composting clients from the environmental consulting side that do all their permitting and environmental compliance work. And just in the last couple of weeks, they said, Les, they said, you know, if we've got a project where we're applying compost as an erosion control mat on a roadway. As a matter of fact, they're currently in the process of doing that on Highway 31 between Longview and Tyler. As a matter of fact, they were just dispersing compost as I was driving over, saw them actually doing that. They may need 10,000 cubic yards for a particular project. They said, how do we determine that really there's 10,000 cubic yards in that pile? It's amazing with the aircraft. You can simply you can fly it manually, but there are also some apps, and I'll show you a couple of the apps here in just a minute, where you can develop a flight plan on the fly using a Google Earth map. You drag the 4 corners, tell it what altitude you'd like to fly, and it calculates the flight time. The particular battery that I have on this one is about 18 minutes, depending upon wind conditions, those types of things. If it doesn't fly the entire flight plan, I can land it, put a new battery in it, tell it to start where it stopped, and finish the flight plan. But it'll collect about 250 to 500 still images with about 40% overlap as it flies in traverse. You know, one side of the facility comes over, comes back, comes over, and does that back and forth. So that's the data acquisition side. Then once you have the data, which is either stored in the iPad, you can put it on your phone, or it's also on a mini SD card that's actually inside the camera sensor itself. Then comes the data processing side. So from the drone application standpoint, there's really 2 areas of expertise. One is maneuvering the aircraft, using the aircraft to put yourself in position to collect the data that's necessary. Then the second part is the data processing side of it. And there are a number of publicly available softwares that are available. Some of them are free, some of them you have to pay for, but a number of different algorithms to do analysis on that. They'll splice those 250 to 500 photographs together so that it's one single orthomosaic image, and from that you can overlay topography on it. You can actually outline stockpiles and instruct it to calculate the volumes on it. One of my compost clients, I flew it last Thursday. Within an hour, we had the data already analyzed and orthomosaic done. We can identify 19 piles all the way from raw wood that was coming in that needed
the ground to intermediate, screen, compost, the final product, and identify the volumes of all 19 stockpiles, send it to them. They needed it from an accounting standpoint. Their accountant wanted to know how much material you have from an inventory standpoint. One of the other markets that I'm exploring right now is every concrete batch plant that you have. Martin Marietta, I know, has one here on the Loop. We've got one in Tyler. There's one in Fieldworth. Again, on a quarterly basis, from an accounting function standpoint, they want to know how much material they have in inventory. Also, a manager of a particular site, if you've got 100 trucks coming in a quarter dumping material, you'd like to know that you have 100 trucks worth of aggregate or sand that's there that hasn't accidentally walked off the site, so you can use it from a control standpoint from that perspective. So, matter of fact, this is that compost facility that's a client of mine that I flew those piles there. That was just an example of that. Any questions on that? Yes?
How do you determine how much volume is in each pile?
In each pile? Well, again, when the aircraft is flying those traverses and taking the pictures, with 40% overlap with every photograph, when you tie them together, you now have a three-dimensional perspective that you've been able to obtain from the photograph. So with that three-dimensional perspective, again, I'm not a software guy or writing algorithms, but then you can outline. What I would do is go into the software that's available online, and then just simply draw a line around that pile, one around this pile, one around the third, one around the fourth, and then I'd say calculate. And then it will calculate, give me a number. I'll look at it to see if that sounds, if it looks reasonable based on what I know the dimensions of the pile will be. But it will calculate it to plus or minus 1 to 2%, which is close enough for those of us in the field from an accounting perspective. Good question. Yeah. Construction. Trying to think of a construction site nearby campus. Anybody seen any recent construction in the area? Large scale construction? I mean, Eastman, obviously, we have construction projects going on all the time. We've got a new Walmart that's being built on the east side of Tyler. And I talked with several contractors, and those contractors and the general contractor are flying the Walmart Supercenter site weekly to ascertain who's doing what, the progress of the site, also monitoring it from a health and safety perspective. You know, are folks wearing the appropriate health and safety gear? Are they operating in accordance with the requirements of their contract? So you can actually use that to grade the performance of contractors. So being used from that standpoint. Environmental site assessments, maybe the application for the original idea, the seed idea that's put in my mind for using it. Spill response and compliance. Again, you can use it if a spill has occurred from a tank or a pipeline or a truck, some other matter, you can use it to document what the spill conditions are, and then after the cleanup or the remediation is finished, you can use it to document that as well. At refineries, one of my refinery clients has some tanks that are 50,000 barrel tanks that hold jet fuel, diesel, and gasoline. And all those tanks, from an air emissions perspective, they're required to limit the emissions that come off of that. Well, one of the ways to do that, some of you may be familiar with this technology, is they use external floating roofs. All of these have hard roofs. I don't see a floating roof on any of these, but on an external floating roof or an internal floating roof, the roof actually floats on the liquid, and therefore it limits the amount of emissions that can come off of that. As that roof moves up and down, there is a gasket, for better use of another word, that actually limits or maintains contact with the outer wall of the tank by limiting emissions. And that, on a yearly basis, they're required to do an inspection and identify any gap that's greater than 1/8 of an inch. The way they currently do that now is they take a 2-man crew and they put them up on top of the roofs and they give them a dowel that's an 1/8" diameter, all the way up to 1.5 inches in diameter, and guess what they get to do for a day? You got it. Before they get up on the roof, health and safety goes up there first just to make sure that it's not an explosive atmosphere, an oxygen-deficient atmosphere. And if it has some oxygen conditions, obviously if it's an explosive atmosphere, they're not going to put personnel up there. But once they determine that that's safe, if there are oxygen problems, then they get to wear supply and air all day. And if it happens to be in July or August, and it's 100, 101 degrees, but you're on the top of a white tank of steel that's about 115, and you're just inside the wall so that you get no draft whatsoever, and you're wearing fire retardant clothing, and you have supplied air tied on to you so that you have an umbilical cord to an oxygen tank the whole time. That's really not a whole lot of fun. That's not my anticipated race over day. That's kind of like it. So that takes about a day, and again, they take the 1/8" dowel and they insert it along the edge of the tank all the way around it. Yes, sir.
There's another risk on those tanks, and that's internal corrosion that you can't see from the exterior. If a human falls through into a tank of organic or whatever, it'll sink like a rock.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Good point. Good point. So they'll take that down. If they find an 1/8" gap, then they have to measure the length of it, and they have to slide in a 1/4" dowel, a 3/8" dowel, a 1/2" dowel, and measure those, get the average width of the gap, the length of it, and then you do some calculations as to what are allowables as far as having the overall area gap versus the dimensions of the tank. So what I'm working on right now, and I don't have it completely down, but I think the technology could be used, the drone technology could be used to fly that gap, whether it's with thermal infrared or just with a high-resolution camera. The issue, as you can probably appreciate, is the angle that the observation is made, and then being able to adjust the processing of that data so that that angle is always true, and you have calibration at all times. Yes?
Could you maybe attach like a length intro to a quadcopter and try doing that?
No, you wouldn't be able to do that. Simple reason being is that if you have that 1/8" rod attached on this, and you're flying down, and the external roof is below the top of the tank walls, you're going to collide with the tank itself. So what I'm working on is maybe putting some sort of tape markings on the top of the tank so that I can calibrate to true. I'm also working with a retired Air Force defense contractor who he did this for 30 years, remote sensing. He mostly used satellites and airplanes. And so he's in the process of seeing if we can figure out how we can do that. I just think it can be done much safer, it can be done much more efficiently, much more cost effective, not put people at risk. That's one of the biggest things that we face in construction, environmental applications, in industry is just putting people at risk where they don't need to be put at risk. Also, just simple things like if your home, a storm came through, ripped up the shingles, and you had some moisture damage, you go through the process of calling, filing the claim, the adjuster comes out, they put a ladder up on the house, and we had this happen at our home in Tyler about 6 months ago, and the adjuster came out, and it happened to be a foggy day, and there was a little bit of moisture in the air, and she said, sorry, I can't go on top of your house. And I said, why is that? And she said, safety hazard. I can't go on top of the house when the shingles are moist. You know, I had left the office to go home to meet her, and she said, I'll just have to come back at another time. Really? I'll go up and take a blow dryer. With the drone, you can fly it in about 10 minutes, have all the information, upload that to the adjuster who's sitting at their desk, settle the claim. So it's being used from that perspective. Have another friend that's in the construction business, and he said they have to certify roofs as part of their construction contract. And so we're in the process of talking with them about buying the roofs for recently constructed steel buildings so that they can meet that requirement. One of the other ones I just wrote about just this week, and I've got several nursery friends, is what about if you, let's say you owned a nursery that was 15 acres of exotic plants and trees and whatnot, and we got one of those deep, I know we don't get these very often, especially for you guys up north, you think that the south is pretty moderate during the winter, which mostly is. But let's say that we got 5 days of below 32-degree weather, and that freeze, they lost a lot of their inventory and had to file an insurance claim. Well, what's the insurance company going to ask first? Verify for us that you actually had plants that were in healthy conditions before the freeze, so that if we're going to pay on this claim, that we got some documentation about that. So I think one of the other useful areas is periodically, maybe once a quarter, or maybe even before going into the winter, is fly a nursery, document the plants that you have, so that in case if there's an event that occurs, you could file a claim and you could substantiate that. So applications there as well. Oil and gas, I talked a little bit about that. Site development, leak detection, tank corrosion, perimeter surveillance, and right-of-way monitoring. Have a relative that's in the environmental engineering industry in North Dakota. There's a large oil play up there, shale play, the Bakken Shale. And they've got, they're in the midst of constructing pipelines, but they're out in the middle of nowhere. Anybody been to western North Dakota? Badlands? I mean, it's barren out there. In the winter, it's even worse. Well, they've got to inspect these above ground pipelines. I'm not sure what the frequency is, but they're in the process of evaluating to see if, number one, they can get a waiver from the line of sight rules because it's out in the middle of nowhere and there just aren't people around or other structures, improvements that could be damaged in the event of an aircraft falling. But the limitation is the battery life. With the new Inspire 2 that is just about to come out on the marketplace in the next 2 or 3 weeks, they'll take an 18-minute battery life and they put tandem batteries on them and they'll get about a 26-minute battery life. Well, still difficult to fly like 60 miles of pipeline with just one battery. So what they're looking at doing is putting remote charging stations that would be stationed along the pipeline project. So the drone would get up, take off, inspect, come down, fly into a heated small structure that the battery can then be recharged, and then come back out, kind of like a cuckoo clock, if you will. Come back out of the little building, fly back up, fly to the next segment, go to a charging station, and do that periodically without having to have anyone present on the site. And you obviously feed through satellite the images directly to a control station and evaluate that information. So that's kind of interesting technology, still in the process of getting all of that worked out. Other applications in agriculture, all the way from, you can kind of see the tannish brown in this cornfield right here. Even with just a visual sensor, you can see that something's going on there. When you think about this collection of data, really what we're collecting is data that shows there's some sort of difference that's going on, whether it's thermal with a temperature signature, or it's just using the visual spectrum. There's a difference. And here, there's a case where something is going on in that field. Is it a nutrient issue? Is it a moisture issue? Is it a pest or fungal issue? Don't know. But who would know that best? The farmer. So once he's got this information, he knows something is going on. The question is, what is it? With his expertise, he can then go out in the field, address these particular issues, and see what the issue is, and then address it. In the past, we didn't have the capability of doing it. Now you can actually take steps in this year's crop to increase the yield for this year's harvest, not next year's harvest. And that makes a tremendous difference. Let's say it was a nutrient issue. Everything that is cataloged by the aircraft is GPS coordinated. So again, if he happens to have a GPS tracker and has a spray unit on it, he wants to use inorganic fertilizer, he can go out to that particular area and spray it, or if it's a fungal issue, use a fungicide and spray that on a particular area, thereby limiting the amount of money he spends, because in the old days, what would they have done? Just spray the whole field, right? So you waste a resource there, and in this case, you're strategically putting on that area. With some of the algorithms, you can actually calculate indices based upon the spectrum of light that is absorbed or reflected by the plant itself. And so that gives you an indication of whether something is going on. Again, you can use different color schemes, but in this case, the green is healthy and the red is not. So again, the farmer then walks out in the field, identifies that area, and makes a determination as to what's going on and decides what's the proper thing to do to rectify the situation. So, what are the benefits of using drone technology? Because really, what it is it's just a platform to collect data that we previously haven't had. I mean, when you're using a camera, what's the limitation of using a camera?
It's attached to your body.
Yeah, it's attached to your body, and that camera can only go and sense where you physically are able to go and sense. Let's say that you had a 3-story crane that's required to, an inspection is required to be done on that on an annual basis. How easy is it to inspect a 3-story crane? What would you need to inspect a 3-story crane? Typically, conventional. A man lift that could go to 3 stories, and then can you get that man lift in every orientation that's needed to do a 360-degree inspection of the superstructure itself, the overhead portion, the winches, all of that? Can you normally do that just by working out of a man lift? That's a difficult thing to do. Plus, it puts the person in harm's way. You're up in a man lift with training devices. Not easy to work in those types of environments, and you're taking risks that don't necessarily have to be taken. You could take a drone aircraft, fly up and down 360 degrees, get to areas, and then not only at the end of the inspection, which someone may simply say, check, 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 it's fine, and you have a sheet of paper that says, it's good, it was inspected on this date, I guarantee that I signed and sealed it, it was found this particular date, and you have a piece of paper that documents it. Do you actually have the data to back it up, to show that the inspection was fine? Do you have a documentation of a stress fracture that was not significant enough that it needed to be addressed, but you wanted to monitor it on an ongoing basis? And next year when you do the evaluation, you have another image that you can compare to it to see if it's gotten any worse. Corrosion. You have, again, documentation of where it is today, and then where it is next year, and where it is the year after that. So it gives you the ability to access locations that we just previously haven't been able to do. Expanded coverage. For example, a 200-acre site that was being done from an agricultural perspective could fly that probably in about 20 minutes. Had a landfill client of mine that wanted me to do a calculation of the waste in place so that we could determine the capacity requirements for how much longer they have to operate. And again, we flew the waste pile in about 20 minutes. I did notice something interesting on that one, and that is that most landfills, because of the odors and the trash that are present, they tend to have buzzards around them. They actually have, they're not flare guns, they're just kind of a sonic gun that they fire, the buzzards go everywhere. Well, buzzards took an interest in the drone, and I hadn't thought about that before. And I thought, oh, this could not turn out very well if one of those buzzards gets too close to the drone. They stayed far enough away. They did have an interest in what it was, but they stayed far enough away. So you can cover quite a bit of territory in a relatively quick period of time. Immediate deployment, response, and revisits. And it's just a function of getting the aircraft back out, driving to the location. Within 5 minutes, you're up in the air and up and going. Output available in all different sorts of formats. New formats that I'm learning about, but just about any kind of format from a geographic information system or a CAD perspective is available, and obviously they're very, very cost effective. Show you a little bit on this Inspire 1. This is a PDI aircraft, 360-degree gimbal. It's in the landing mode right now with the legs down. Mechanically, there's one screw in here, and the screw operates to simply move the legs up into the flying orientation. Lots of electronics, battery sitting here in the back. So the battery just simply slides out. From the standpoint of putting the propellers on, they're a quick release. Just one quick turn, and the propeller's off. And yeah, it's just phenomenal. So within 5 minutes, I could be on site, have the propellers on, the sensor mounted, the battery in, and off we go. I can fly again manually using a remote control unit with the iPhone, various applications, so that, again, you can move from just a remote flying it to actually calculating flight plans or designing flight plans and flying it with flight plans. I'm not a gaming guy. That's unfortunately not my generation. It was pinball machines. And that was flappers on either side about as much as I got into it. But up, down, turn left, turn right, or go left, go right, forward, reverse, right, left. How's that for you? So it's pretty incredible. Got the opportunity yesterday to fly inside of the building, so I didn't have GPS launching, so it was a little bit more of a challenge. I had 2 moving cranes, and then had had a group, it was a manufacturing facility where they were welding skids, pipelines, pressure control units for the oil and gas industry. And what they wanted to do was design a 30-second promotional video that would show what they do from the beginning to end, so that they could put that on their website, also put that on the TV screen in the intro area of their facility. So went back and forth flying a production day at probably about 20 feet and getting around, staying away from people so that I wasn't flying over people, but also trying to miss cranes as I told these guys that we're getting ready to come down there with the drone, please don't operate the cranes. The nice thing about it is you can actually operate with 2 remote control units, and that's what we did yesterday. I operated the master unit for the aircraft, and then I had another individual operating the slave remote control unit, which is the same that operates only the camera. So he could orient the camera and take pictures if necessary, or video if necessary for that, for the operator from that perspective. Real easy to use. You use iPad, Android, and again, I get enough resolution. Enough resolution on this. That's actually the flight screen that you see with the altitude, velocity, charge power on the battery itself. Got this one actually set up so that 30% battery life left. It gives me a beep, lets me know that I'm getting kind of low. At 10%, I have it automatically set up to come home. So if it gets to 10%, stops the flight plan. No matter what I'm doing, if I'm flying it remotely or flying it manually or automatically, it comes home. If I lose it, I hit the H button and it comes home. One day I was out flying 2 weeks ago, flying a compost facility, and I got it probably 2,500 feet away up at about 300 feet. And someone asked me a question, and I took my eyes down from it, I started talking with them, and I looked back up immediately, couldn't find it, and panic set in. Because it was a little tiny, in the middle of nowhere. And I almost hit the H button. I said, now, calm down for just a second. Readjust your eyes to distance. Found it. Got the orientation of the aircraft. Brought it back to me. But, yeah, you can get some distance away. It's hard to see it, but you can get the home button. If it flies outside of its communication distance, which is about 3 miles, also once it loses communication with the remote, I've also got it set up to automatically. So some neat little things that are associated with that. Any questions with respect to the aircraft? Oh, bunch. Yes.
Will you fly today?
You know what? It's a bit windy today. If we can find a spot where I know that students, faculty are not going to walk underneath it, yes, we'll do that. Okay. Yes, sir.
What's a unit like that cost?
Unit like that with the high resolution sensors close to $5,000. You can. I was at Best Buy the other night. $99 for just a little craft handmade with a camera on it. Obviously not quite this industrial level. And you can get it anywhere from $100 up to $1,200. The Phantom 3, Phantom 4, what is it running, guys? About $1,200 right now? $900 to $1,200. And that's a
From your standpoint, that Phantom 4 or something, the most cost effective, again, trailers?
yes. That's what I'm looking at, Phantom 3 or Phantom 4.
I've been drawing on.
Yes, sir.
You're limited by the 400 feet AGL, under FAA laws.
Yeah.
How do you keep that and avoid interaction with other low altitude aircraft like front busters?
They get the right way. So when I go out, when I'm doing the pre-flight inspection, I'm not just looking at the aircraft itself, I'm looking at the surroundings. My antennas are going up for utilities, electrical lines, towers, trees themselves. You would think that in East Texas, 75 feet would be sufficient to get you over all trees. Now when I started flying one, I went, oops, I don't feel comfortable with 75 feet. So I got up to 125, just a little bit higher, just so I knew that there was some clearance. So you get to where, as a pilot, you're just trying to be aware of your surroundings. And I prefer to fly it when I have an observer at the other end of the facility. And then we have two-way communication so that he or she can, obviously has the ability to see some things that I can't see. Yesterday when I was flying through this production bay, it probably was 500 feet, 600-700 feet from one end to the other. And they wanted me to, again, because they were thinking production video marketing type things. And I'm thinking, let me get through this with my aircraft in one piece and get it tight down to the ground. So they said, well, why don't you start outside the bay and then fly into the bay and go down the production line and fly out the door on the other end, and that would be pretty cool. Okay, let's give that a shot. So I started outside, started coming in. They had the crane set off to the side. I get down to the other end, and somebody, unbeknownst to me and I guess the other folks that were doing welding and grinding in the area, had decided to bring a cherry picker in with about 10 30-foot sticks of 2-inch steel pipe. And so I was about to collision course with the cherry picker. And, you know, in your mind, you think, I'm just going to hit the stop button and stop. Well, that's not the way an aircraft works. Or if you've ever been in a boat, you know, when you put it, you're going 30 miles an hour and you put it in neutral, guess what the boat keeps doing? It keeps on moving. It doesn't just stop. So here I am thinking, oh, let's hit the stop button and avoid this crash. And I know that you can actually stop your forward momentum, turn right, come back the other way. So me not being a pilot, me being a ground guy, I had to kind of think through that process before I ended up crashing over the chair. Yes?
If you're working for people doing that, who want you to go through buildings and stuff,
Yeah.
you may want to take a look at the Inspire 2 they just came out with, because it's got sensors on the front and on the top.
Yeah, yes. Yeah,
Just
well,
a thought.
Yep. Yeah, it's got obstruction avoidance brains built into it. So, yes, I think that'd be a cool thing. Well, especially doing, for example, a water tower inspection, where you want to be as close as possible, but obviously you don't want to tap it. So if you can get set it at 5 feet or 10 feet away, and then fly up, down, and all the way around it, boy, that'd be great. Yeah? Yeah, I was just looking at it this morning. It showed up on my inbox, and so I was looking at the Inspire 2. It looks like a pretty good aircraft. Yeah, pretty cool. Anything else? Yes?
How about privacy concerns? What if I don't want you flying over my yard?
So that comes the legal portion of it. Currently, we're flying in Class G airspace, and that airspace is public airspace, but there is the issue of privacy. So, for example, if I'm doing flyover of an industrial facility, but there's a residence next to that, when I design a flight plan, I'd like to make sure that I have coverage to the edge of that facility. So I'm going to fly actually about 50 feet beyond the border of that particular property. The issue is I may collect some information on a residence in their backyard of them doing something that they would rather me not have that information about. That part hasn't been worked out yet, and I would imagine as we work through the next couple of years with technology, I think I saw a little over 12,000 applications have been made for the Part 107 license. Bless you. And so all of a sudden now here you've got 12,000 plus I think there were about 3,000 that were already approved under the previous regulatory requirements that are flying. So now you've got about 15,000 commercial units that are out there flying in the U.S. So that aspect is going to be worked out in the courts, most likely, because I'm sure there are going to be people. Or let's say that, for example, I have 2 industrial clients, and I'm flying one doing something rather innocuous, and the other one's handling hazardous waste that they've not reported to the state or the EPA, and they don't want anyone to know, and they've got nice 20-foot privacy fences, and I just happen to capture some images of them burying some drums right next to the property line on the property. Again, I'm not going to do anything with it because it's my client's proprietary information. I'm going to handle it accordingly. But if I have that, and they know that I have that, there could be some legal implications. Yes, sir.
I can add to that. As far as privacy goes, for unmanned aircraft in the U.S., it's entirely based on what state you're in. So the FAA governs the airspace, but the privacy is based on state laws. So Texas made a list of 19 industry uses that are exempt from the privacy concerns. So if you work in oil and gas or law enforcement or research or education, then you can collect any data you want. If you're a private citizen, you have to stay over public property or have permission from the landowner to take pictures. Otherwise, you cannot fly over private property without that person's permission. So they made a little. Texas is probably the best that I've seen of that. Otherwise, it's entirely based on states you fly. That's one of the issues.
Good. You know where that information is available?
The Texas law. Look up UAS Privacy Act, and it was 2015.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, maybe this would be a good time for our aviation sponsors to tell us more about the aviation courses available in drone.
Well, I don't know if
Yeah,
you
go
know
ahead.
here. So I'm Rudy Schubart. I'm the drone program coordinator in our College of Aviation. So I wanted to share with all of you, most of you are non-majors, obviously. We only have a couple in here that are, but the Intro to Remotely Piloted Aircraft Systems course is available to all of you starting this next spring. So if you're interested in taking that, talk to your advisor. Currently, if you go to try to select it, it'll make you do prerequisites, but just tell it it's dumb, and email me, and I'll get you in a class if you want to take it. Also, to follow on with that, there's a class and a lab, by the way. The lab we'll be talking about, we'll be getting into remote control. You actually build an airplane and fly it, get some practice on a simulator, and program a little rover that will have to drive around campus from a laptop up here. So things like that. The class will be talking about history of UAS, some of the parts of all the systems, how they work, the applications. We'll go into more in depth than what we talked about here, and as well as the regulations that you need to know in order to go get your license. So those are, again, the intro class is available to non-majors. You also have a minor. If you're in a major that's not in aviation, but you think you want to do this, use this in your job going forward, we have a minor available. It's not in the catalog currently. It'll be in the catalog next fall. You can start taking the classes. It's 18 hours. Includes a couple of extra aviation classes to get familiar with the industry. And then you'll have the certificates. You'll have the practical experience throughout our degree programs. We'll be doing some things on campus even with civil engineering, and then also facility services, things like inspecting the rooftops on campus, mapping out the oil and gas and the water lines on campus, things like that with drones. A lot of these applications that you'll be able to do and you'll have practical experience and have kind of a portfolio of work that you can take if you're interested in using that in the future. So that's my little plug there. If any of you need more information about that, you can email me. I don't have any cards with me, but if you go to letu.edu/RPAS, that's kind of the big landing page for our program. My picture, my email is on there. I've also been on the front page of the website for how long. Super embarrassing, but you can look it up there. So thanks, guys.
Good.
Okay.
Will that fulfill the technical elective requirement on mechanical engineering?
Good try. All right, so we need to break here. Les may try a flight out in the mall here. Otherwise, we'll be out at lunch in the Joyce Room or the Corner Cafe if you want to come by there. Now let's next week is Thanksgiving, so no science seminar, so we'll see you in a couple weeks.